Social media infographics are shaping our political discourse, and young people's minds are on the chopping block. It's now trendy to despise patriotism and cancel those who think differently than us. I'm Cameron Arcand. I'm launching the Young Not Stupid interview series, powered by the Western Journal. I'll be interviewing a wide variety of guests through a conservative lens with people that will better equip you with the truth about what's happening in our country and around the globe. President Ronald Reagan once said that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction, and we need to take that to heart. So tune in each Friday to the Young Not Stupid interview series to be prepared in the fight for the values that make America exceptional. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Young Not Stupid interview series. I'm Cameron Arcand, and today I'm here with Charles Mizrahi. He is a financial expert with over 4 decades of experience working on Wall Street. He was ranked one of the number one traders by Barron's Magazine and is now the host of the Charles Mizrahi Show podcast and is a newsletter with over 200,000 subscribers who love to listen and hear about his financial insights into today's economy. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the Biden administration's economy, particularly because it's a very tough time for consumers, young and old. And we're going to be focusing on the supply chain crisis and a lot of other topics that will affect you and your wallet. So Charles, I was wondering if you could kind of get started showing a little bit about how you got your start and where you are now.
So my start is pretty simple. I grew up in a middle-class family, really working-class family. Back in the 60s and mid 70s. And everyone around me were really great people. They were my father was a warehouse manager, and there were factory workers, and there were security guards and sanitation workers and teachers who lived on our block. So real hardworking American folks. And I knew that I wanted to break out of this working class in terms of making more money. That was my goal. And they were really also encouraging because they were living the American dream. Every one of them was optimistic and positive about America. And really, my parents and that whole neighborhood was just something that, unfortunately, we don't see much about today. So anyway, I went to college for about 6 months or about a year or so. And then I found my way to Wall Street and I became a floor trader. Then eventually I managed money. I started managing money at 22. And did that for a pretty long while. And I started writing a newsletter after I left managing money. It's a very grueling, tough, amazingly lucrative business, but I wanted to start sleeping again at nights. So I started to write a newsletter, and that's what I do now. So I write a newsletter for Main Street Americans on how to make money in the stock market.
Yeah, kind of going a little bit deeper into that. A lot of young people right now are kind of having doubts about whether or not they'll be able to achieve the American dream, or even just basic things such as owning a house or having a good enough retirement fund. What's kind of your message to people who are just getting their start? They may have just graduated college or they're going straight into the workforce at a high school. What's your advice to this group of people who kind of have a very pessimistic outlook on the way the economy is looking right now? What are certain things they can do to manage their own money in their personal life in order to have a more prosperous future for themselves and their children?
First, if you're pessimistic, folks and listeners of this show, stop it right now. Go in the bathroom, wash your face with cold water, and snap out of it. Nobody ever made money shorting America, and they're not going to start now. America is the only country on the face of the earth founded on Judeo-Christian values, that freedom and opportunity is there for every one of its citizens. We're the only country in the world that have people waiting online to get in, trying to jump over fences, trying to dig tunnels, trying to go on rowboats to come to this country. And there's a reason for that, because this land represents freedom and opportunity. Number two, if you're just graduating high school or college, you couldn't pick a better time to start a career. Workers are needed in so many different fields, especially if you're skilled, if you are going to be a professional and you have great skills, if you know how to program or use a spreadsheet, or you're an excellent writer, whatever it is, there are tremendous amounts of jobs waiting for you out there. In New York, where I am, I see my kids who are about your age or so. They're getting offers almost every day and being poached from go to one company to another. And it's just absolutely amazing. And number three, what do you do now if you're starting out? First of all, don't worry about today. Worry is a price you pay for something that may never come to pass. So if you want to start a family, if you want to build a business, if you want to go to school, if you want to start a job, do it now. There's always a terrible time. It always looks like a terrible time. And it's in the midst of what looks like a terrible time, which poses tremendous, amazing, great opportunities. Keep in mind, I grew up in the 70s. It was terrible. It was terrible. New York was known as Fear City, USA. People were being mugged. We had number one murders, I think, in the nation. There was graffiti everywhere. There were homeless all around. The city was bankrupt. It was terrible. In addition, prices were rising. There was rampant inflation. And it looked around, it looked depressing, but we survived these things because the American people are very pragmatic. We live in a country that values the rights of the individual. We have a system of government that's fair, a tax system that's equitable, and we have the greatest people in the world trying to come here and live here. So tell me, what's there to be pessimistic about?
One of the things I want to discuss with you about is particularly the supply chain crisis. If you go into a grocery store, go into Target right now, most of the stuff is generally speaking there, but you might occasionally see shelves or sticker prices that say, sorry for the inconvenience, they're out of stock. And a lot of this has to do with what we're seeing with cargo ship backlog and a bunch of other supply chain issues. I was wondering if you could kind of go a little bit deeper into what you're seeing and what consumers should be expecting in the next few months in terms of the supply chain.
First off, these are first world problems, folks. We have running water, we have sanitation, our bellies are full, and there's opportunity everywhere. So if we see a few empty shelves, realize it's a first world problem. Most of the world can't eat or have fresh water. So let's put it in perspective. Number two, supply chain. It happens. It happened. We had the perfect storm. We had a situation where the world shut down. It was under a global pandemic. COVID wasn't a laughing matter. There were hundreds, I don't know how many people died. I knew several friends, family members who passed away. It's tragic, absolutely tragic. So these people who manufacture all our goods, or most of our goods, and all the stuff that we love to have as American consumers, most of them are made in China or India or in some foreign country. Those workers were also getting sick and dying, and factories were shut down. So you have a supply chain issue. You have demand over here, but you don't have enough supply. Supply's down here. What happens when demand continues to increase, which it has been increasing? Because amazing, during this pandemic, the economy was still strong. Segments of the economy were doing absolutely well. And consumers didn't stop spending or demanding stuff. What was happening? They were switching it. Instead of going out to the movies or to a club or to dinner, because all these places were closed down, consumers were taking their money and spending it other places. So we had the perfect storm. We had demand not only stay the same, but increase, and supply, because of a whole bunch of reasons, continue to shrink. So now you have too much demand chasing too few supply. You have rising prices. Temporary situation. When is it going to be fixed? I wish I had a crystal ball. It will take some time. It will take some time to work through the system. These things do. We live in a society, we want everything fixed in a heartbeat. That's just not the way the real world works. It takes time for supply chain to get back up. It takes time for demand and supply to come out in some equilibrium. And it's during those time periods that you shouldn't freak out, panic, jump under your covers and never get out of bed. These are the times where a level-headed, positive attitude and looking around at all the opportunity that's there, that's the time you take advantage of these things.
My last question for you here is, what policy should the Biden administration be working on or gutting in order to improve the economic outlook currently? Or should the economy just let it run its course right now and there's nothing they can really do on a governmental level?
All right, great questions. First, the Biden administration and Democrats weren't doing their best job. They weren't being fiscally responsible. When you have a supply chain issue with increased demand and decreasing supply, you have inflation because you have too many dollars chasing too few supplies, so people bid up prices. This Thanksgiving's going to be one of the most expensive, I think, in a long while, maybe on record, as prices keep going up. Okay, The last thing you want to do to ever fuel inflation is you want to add trillions of dollars to the economy. Because what are you doing? You're now adding more ability for demand, more dollars, now chasing even fewer supply. Terrible situation. The Biden administration, I don't believe were acting fiscally responsible. They were trying to put through, I think the 3.5 trillion is now down to 1.75 trillion, which is still outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, here's the way it works. It's very simple. And people get so bent out of shape because they don't really think this through and see why it's so important to have fiscally responsible lawmakers in office. As a country, we generate around $22 trillion a year. So if we were a company and did sales, we sell and produce $22 trillion. Now, out of that $22 trillion, around $4 trillion is collected as taxes, about 18%. So that goes to the government. So the government has $4 trillion out of our $22 trillion that we generated. What do they do with the $4 trillion? They spent 6.8 of it. Now, you don't need to be a genius. If you only bring in $4 trillion in revenue in income, and you spend 6.8 trillion in expenses, you're going to have a deficit of 2.8 trillion. Compound that, take that to the deficit you have now, add it to last year, and your deficit's in the high 26 or 28 trillion dollars. That is not good fiscal policy. Never was, never will be. You don't spend more than you have. And especially in programs and all this kind of pork belly garbage that's in this bill, if it doesn't increase the worth or brings economic value someplace somewhere. So a lot of the spending, you don't have to be a genius to figure this one out. A lot of the spending is basically just partisan politics. So the Biden administration, what they should basically do is nothing. Stop. They've done enough. They've done enough. Let the markets work through the supply chain. Let the equilibriums come into play with demand and supply coming up again. And don't keep doing silly things. Let me interrupt you one more second. I'm sorry.
All right. Yeah.
There's always an uncertain time.
Mm-hmm.
Never are times certain. Never. So if someone told me there's a certainty that's coming up, please call me in the middle of the night and let me know, because there's no such thing. We're always dealing in uncertain times. I highly recommend in a plug for shameless self-promotion, go on charlesmizrahi.com, my website, and get my book. It's only $10. I think we lowered it even, maybe. And it's a simple 100-page book, Main Street for Main Street investors, Wall Street profits for Main Street investors. In there, it basically talks about American prosperity. It talks about why now, and especially now, is an outstanding time, and the best days of our country in terms of investing, in terms of wealth creation, are ahead of us and not behind us.
Let the market do its thing. Well, I really appreciate your no-nonsense insight on this issue. I think it really brought some needed guidance and pessimism that I think a lot of people in the audience might be seeking during this what might be an uncertain time. So Charles Mizrahi, everyone heard that. If you're interested in more content like the things that you heard here today, please head on over to westernjournal.com and be sure to like and subscribe to this video channel. I'm Cameron Arcan, signing off.